Welcome. This is the Fly Culture Podcast with me, Pete Tigers. A quick bit of housekeeping before we get going with this episode. We're having another Fly Culture gathering on Thursday, January 23rd at Orvis in Stockbridge. There'll be some beer, beige buffet and plenty of fishing talk. I have some great guests coming along, including Peter Hayes and Don Stasica, who I'll be picking their brains for tips for the new season, along with some other exciting guests too. We'll put some stuff out on socials, but I hope I'll see you there. We put on these events to help create a sense of community, forge new friendships, and perhaps even go fishing. This is a seamless segue into my guest for today, who I met at this event last year and was thrilled to see pictures of her out on the river with our friend Gilly Bate the next day. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Zoe Dupuy. Zoe, it's great to have you along on the podcast. Storm Dara, I think it is blowing hard, but we've managed to get through this. The power's still on. Great to have you along.
Great to be here. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for inviting me.
You're most welcome. So how are things with you? Is weather affecting you, and is it affecting fishing as a result of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no fishing going on today. I think it's sort of 60-mile-an-hour winds where I'm based, which is just outside Southampton, right on the coast. So my flat literally overlooks Southampton water, which is obviously great for fishing when the weather allows for some seawater, saltwater, fly fishing. So, but not today.
And is it one of those dream things? I've been lucky enough out in Denmark, and we were fishing where some houses walked straight out onto the coast. And I sort of kind of imagine being able to have a rod rigged up ready. The salt probably would eat it away anyway. But I have this sort of idea that the rod's ready. You go out, make a few casts, catch a fish, release it, smile, and go back home. Are you able to do that sort of thing yourself?
Yeah, it's really lucky where I live because I do a lot of sailing as well, which kind of brought me down to the south coast, and find myself in this apartment, which is right next to the sailing club, where I do have a little dinghy as well. So I go out sailing on that. But also, it ties in, like I said, my fly fishing on the salt water. So yeah, I get home from work and definitely just have a few casts. There's a pipe that comes out just by the sailing club. Comes out into the sea, and that seems to be a hotspot for bass. So yeah, it's great. It's really accessible and easy to do after work. So,
and when you're wandering around there with a rod, are people kind of used to and conditioned to it, or do you get funny looks from people and you have to watch where your backcast is going to?
Yeah, I mean, luckily it's not a particularly busy beach, and it is not a lot of people fish this area. So it is kind of, when you're there with a fly rod, you do get a few odd looks, but it's not that busy, so you don't need to worry too much about hooking someone on the back cast, which is great for me.
And so for you, it's sailing and fishing. Is it a toss-up between the two? I sort of kind of imagine that you go out, make a few casts ahead of going sailing, and then end up getting stuck into the fishing, and the sailing gets knocked into the background, and vice versa as well sometimes, that perhaps fishing gets... It sounds like you have a passion for both, but is there one that edges it for you?
Yeah, well, interestingly, so I'm from Scotland and moved down here about 5.5 years ago for the sailing and for a job in the sailing industry. I still work in the marine industry now. And that was my passion at the time. I did do some fly fishing, but it's actually flipped now, so that I do less fishing, do less sailing and more fishing. I just find it more kind of engaging at the moment, but definitely conditions as well. So I prefer to go sailing when it's windy, basically. And so it kind of works quite well because I can go out sailing if it's super windy after work. And if it's not, I can go out fishing. So yeah, it's good to have those two hobbies that I can do in the different conditions, always out doing something.
That sounds like a total win-win. And you mentioned about working in the sailing industry or the marine industry. And I'm fascinated to understand, because I look at our little fishing world, as it were, and Is there comparisons that you see? Is that a bigger marketplace? I'm guessing it probably is, but does it work in a similar sort of way that, people, we have people who are hugely passionate about it, but we also have people who kind of do it every now and again. Is it a similar sort of thing?
Yeah, it's bigger than than fishing. I don't know actually. Is it bigger than fishing in general or just fly? Not sure. Definitely bigger than the fly fishing community. And yeah, it's split up in similar ways where you've got cruisers that just like to go out for a jolly around the Isle of Wight sort of thing, but then you've also got high performance athletes as well. So there's the competitive side of sailing, which I think a lot of people who aren't familiar with sailing don't really kind of know about this side of it, which is, that athlete side of it, people getting paid quite a lot of money to go sailing in different countries, and their jobs on board these boats are very physical. So yeah, it's similar in ways, definitely. And it's also, you've got that passion similarity as well. Like, people are super passionate about sailing as much as they are about fly fishing and fishing in general. So yeah, it's a similar market for sure.
And for you, moving from the top of the country to the bottom, was that a big change for you, and to be able to settle into a new life in a new part of the world?
I mean, I think when I did that, so I was 22 or 23, it was just kind of that age where, and I'm the same now, I'm not, but that age where you just don't really think about it, I got a job in the company that I really wanted to work for, in the sailing industry, in a marketing role, and it was just too good to be true, really. So I literally I graduated from university, and bought myself a little mini 2009 mini, which I loved, and then just crammed it full with suitcases and various random bits of kind of furniture from my house, and then off I went, waved my parents goodbye, and got down here. I didn't know one person, and I was sharing a flat with this guy who I'm still friends with now. So it's worked out really well. I've got a great group of friends, and I think that is actually, talking about similarities between sailing and fishing, is it's a sociable sport or pastime, and I think you get that with sort of pastimes and sport where there's passion. It's everyone can just share that passion together. So I've been lucky in that sense, where I've got a good group of friends stemmed from the fact that I did a lot of sailing when I came down here, and I still have those friends now. So yeah, I didn't find it too hard to transition, and I guess I am someone that just likes sort of putting myself out of my comfort zone, and I really enjoy change and sort of progressing and like movement and stuff. So I never like to feel like I'm stuck in one spot. So yeah, it was actually a great time. I enjoyed the whole settling in process. Yeah, it was good.
So for you, you've moved down into Hampshire, you're starting to make friends. Obviously, your life's circling around sailing, but I'd be interested to know whether fishing came in and how that happened down there, first of all.
Well, so interestingly, it started up in Scotland. My dad has fished since as long as I can remember, mainly fly fishing, all around Scotland. But we're from Dumfries and Galloway, which is in the southwest of Scotland. So he would go out fishing. It just never interested me at all, really. I think because he really enjoyed sort of reading magazines upon magazines, books, watching videos of casting, like hour-long videos of casting and tying flies and all this sort of thing. And I just thought, well, I don't have the patience for that. That's not my character. I'd rather just, go out and get stuck in. Basically, that's my kind of way of learning. But obviously, everyone's got their different ways of learning. But that's what I saw fishing to be, was how my dad kind of, the amount of research and time he put into it. So then, I graduated university, and I was working in at a coffee shop and living at home, and just kind of, well, I was applying for loads of different jobs, and eventually it worked out. But yeah, it took me probably just under a year or 8 months or something to get the job. And I was just quite bored really at home, living with my parents, having left uni with all my friends. And I just thought, well, I'll go out with Dad this Saturday. He's going out to a reservoir called Kendoon. And I thought to myself, worst case scenario, I'll be on a boat, because when we fish up there, it's on a little rowing boat that comes with the club membership. So I think they've got about 4 boats or something, and you rent it out, and off you go with your oars or electric motor. So we did that, and yeah, I just thought, worst case scenario, I'll be on this boat, I'll be enjoying the scenery, and that'll be fine. And shortly into the session, we were with my brother as well, Ralph, and Ralph caught a rainbow trout, basically, and before I could even process what was happening, the rod was in my hand, and he was kind of shouting instructions as to what I should be doing, and I was just like, oh my goodness, kind of no idea what I was doing or what was going on. And then the trout was in the boat, and we were dispatching of the trout, and I was just kind of like, wow. And I think everyone that listens to this podcast can completely understand that feeling of, it's like adrenaline, and it's excitement, and it's really addictive, that feeling of having a fish at the end of the line. And that was really me hooked. And I know that's a real cliche to say that, but it is the only way I can describe it, where it's kind of like you felt that feeling, you know what it's like. Now I want to do the whole thing myself, because I'd just been handed the rod. So that was it. And I was thinking like, oh, I didn't know that fishing could be just this. Like, I thought I needed to spend time learning how to cast, like, you know, years learning how to cast, years trying to choose the right fly. But it didn't have to be that, is what I kind of realized for me. So then I moved down south, and I thought I really want to take fishing with me. And I joined Meon Springs, which is just in the South Downs. And it was such a great club to be part of, because they were so supportive. And I literally rocked up with a rod that my dad had bought me. It's like an Airflow, I think it's called. Airflow rod and reel. And I think I had some flies, but no idea what fly to put on or anything. And they really helped me. And actually, like, yeah, shout out to Meon Springs Fishery, because the guys there, they gave me different flies to try on. They gave me like free casting lessons, and just really, you know, help me latch onto it down south, because it was really intimidating that first time going out without my dad. And obviously I came down here, all my friends are sailors, no one had even heard of fly fishing, so I didn't go with anyone initially. I did sort of eventually start dragging along my friends, some of which did actually pick up the sport as well, so that's really cool. So Meon Springs was good, and that was it really. And then I just started doing some more fishing around this area, and I met my partner Mike. So he's got a big fishing background as well, and he's really helped me to learn more about fishing and fish behavior, and also the types of fishing outside of fly fishing. So he studied at Sparshall. He studied aquaculture, Sparshall College, which is a college just outside Winchester, and so he knows a lot about that type of like stuff. And basically then we started going out float fishing together. We started going out sea fishing. We were catching plaice and flounder and mackerel off of Chesil Beach. And that opened my eyes up to fishing, I guess, outside of sort of your fishery catching trout. Because once I'd worked out what fly to put on at Meon Springs, I was just catching trout like sort of within half an hour. That was me, and I'd got my 3 trout or something, and off I went, and then made fish cakes or something with it. But then I was like ready to progress into something else. I mean, I still love going there anyway now, but yeah. So it was cool that Mike came along and showed me other aspects of fishing that I didn't know about before.
And do you feel that gene, that fishing gene that your father had, and it sounds like your brother, was dormant, and all it took was that fish on the end of the line to awaken it?
Yeah, definitely. And it is so nice because now I can go home, I go back up to Scotland 2 or 3 times a year. And pretty much every time, I always go out with my dad and my brother. Actually, both my brothers fish. I've got 3 brothers, 2 of them fish. And we go out and we just have such a lovely day doing something we all have that kind of shared enjoyment. And I think that's potentially quite unusual. My dad's sort of older, so he's 84, and it's nice to be able to do something with him that it isn't. There's no barrier. There's no like kind of physicality issue where he obviously wouldn't come on a run with me or go on a bike ride necessarily, but we can do fishing together. So I love that, and he obviously loves that as well. So yeah, it's really good.
And when you were going on these trips with Mike, your partner, were you at any stage, were you sort of feeling that you were more fly orientated? And when you were catching the fish at Chesil Beach or other species as well, were you already thinking, oh, I wonder if I could catch those with a fly?
I don't know, because I've actually really enjoyed the other aspects of. So I love fly fishing because I love the natural element of it. You've not obviously got bait on the end of your line, and it's more of a kind of peaceful way of fishing, I guess. But I really enjoy all aspects of fishing. So I particularly like float fishing for grayling. I love that. Do a lot of that at Timsbury about this time of year. But obviously, you mentioned Jilly at the start, and I went fishing with Jilly probably about this time last year. I think it was January, actually. And she opened my eyes up to fly fishing for grayling. So I'd caught a number of grayling before on the float, but not on the fly. So now I equally love fly fishing for grayling. So I wouldn't say I've got a kind of preference necessarily, but I do fly fishing. I do love, and I do love float fishing as well. But I've fished on with the pole as well, and that's really exciting. And that's super simple too. It's like as simple as it gets, like stripping it right back. So I had a great rud on the fly at the Norfolk Broads. I'd really recommend that as a holiday. Actually, Mike and I hired a little sort of, not a canal boat, but a similar type of thing, or a Broads boat, I guess they're called, and went up to the Norfolk Broads for 3 days and basically just potted around, and just anywhere that we thought looked fishy, we just stopped, tied up, and had a few casts. And I was using the pole and caught this rod. I mean, I'd literally never even heard of a rod, honestly, before I caught it. And so when we netted it and it came out in the water, I was just like, whoa, that is the most amazing looking fish. And it was 2.5 pounds, which I have been told is a specimen, I think. So that was amazing. So yeah, I think just any type of fishing, really, in answer to your question. But I do enjoy the fly fishing. So it's not really answered, but yeah.
It's all good by the sound of it, but I guess we'll circle around fly fishing because I guess listeners are going to be fascinated to learn more about your fly fishing life, which they're getting a very, very good sense of. So if you're going for a day on the water, you've packed the fly rod, where would you consider your home water? Where is the place that you like? Or I'm getting the sense you're quite nomadic about things anyway, but would there be anywhere that you consider when you get there, you smile and think, yeah, this is it?
I mean, obviously the chalk streams are nearby and they are just the most amazing environment. So but that's not where I would say is my home water. I would say it's probably back home in Scotland, to be honest. There's a particular loch called Kerry Rioch, and it's in the middle of nowhere. That's my type of fishing. It's just in the middle of nowhere, completely wild, no phone signal, no one else there. It's like £5 a day. That's what I really love. And that Kerry Rioch is that, and it's just so in the middle of nowhere, and it's just got stunning kind of dramatic scenery around it, and wild browns in the water, and that's probably what I would say is my home water. But down south, I am very nomadic, as you say. Like, I just kind of go wherever I find myself. Like, I was part of Christchurch Angling Club for a year because I was thinking, like, I should probably join some sort of club and have a regular place that I should fish. And actually, the waters there were lovely, and the River Stour is amazing. It's all beautiful, but it just wasn't great for fly fishing. I don't think. I think it's more of a coarse fishery, and at that time, I was just focused on fly fishing. So I have been a member there, but yeah, I'm not part of a club at the moment, although I am waiting to join Salisbury District Angling Club, but that is a 3-year wait or something like that. So I'm on the waiting list, got my fingers crossed, but yeah, it'll be a bit of a long wait.
It'll be worth it, and it's a fantastic club. It's fabulously run as well. And I'm kind of, where you're based is, I guess, in some respects considered the cradle of fly fishing, yet it can be as well frustrating being so near yet so far, in the sense of costing as well. So does that come into it as well for you, that the affordability and the access to some of these stretches of river are slightly more challenging?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that kind of took me by surprise when I came down here, was how much a ticket, well, a lot of them actually can't even get day tickets for. But yeah, the cost of fishing some of these spots. But I can understand why that is the case, because they are pristine, and it's some of the best fishing in the world. And sight fishing it doesn't really get much better than that. But yes, it makes it challenging because I'm not quite at the stage of life to be able to justify spending that on a day of fishing, as much as I love it. So, which is why I kind of go elsewhere, and and that's why I mentioned the certain spots like Wales and Scotland are both really good for it. I'm sure there's places in England as well where you just rock up and it's like there's an honesty box and you fling in a £5 or whatever, and that's you sorted for the day. So but in the winter, obviously, those chalk streams become more accessible because you can pay £60-70. I think Timsbury's a little bit less, and you have the opportunity then to fish for grayling on the fly, and also to just see the water that you've watched the hatches. I mean, I've gone down and watched the hatches, and imagine how frustrating that is for an angler, going down there and watching and seeing all this, but thinking, I can't. I mean, I could fish there, but it would. Yeah, I can't justify, I think is the right word. Can't justify fishing there. So, but yeah, I really enjoy in the winter the grayling fishing. I max out that as much as I can, really, just to get on those waters when it's a little bit more accessible. So, looking forward to, I'm actually fishing Mottisfont in next week actually, and then again in January. So I've never fished there, but I've heard it's a lovely stretch just near Stockbridge. So that'll be cool. Yeah.
Nice. And you mentioned Wales as well. Where is it you like to fish there? Is it lakes there or is it rivers?
So I fished. So Wales obviously has the big reservoirs. So I fished Clairwyn Reservoir, which is, oh God, I don't actually know, can't remember exactly where it is, but it's just like I mentioned, like just in the middle of nowhere, no phone signal sort of thing. And then the Tivy pools as well. So I read that in trout and salmon. And I find Trout and Salmon magazine really good for inspiration as to where to go. So because they literally spell it out for you, you know, they tell you everything about the location. There's a little map with a pin drop, and it even tells you where to park your car. So I find that a really useful addition to that magazine. But yeah, so I saw Tivy Pools on there and thought, this sounds quite cool. And went in, I think it was about April or May a few years ago, and loved it, and I've been back a couple of times since. So Tivy Pools, and I don't think I've really done much river fishing there so far, but it's definitely something I want to do. And they have the beetle hatch on the Tivy Pools as well, which is something that next year I want to go there, because you can get flies that imitate the exact beetle hatch. So I think that would be really cool to see, and also it's probably going to be quite a productive time to be fishing there. So yeah.
That sounds very, very good. So where do you stand then? If I were to throw you the question, rivers or lakes, where would it be?
That's difficult. That's difficult. I mean, rivers just have a lot of different elements to them, don't they? Which is fun. You know, there's different pools, there's different current, there's different sort of obstacles, and the riverbeds sort of varying depth. So I would say river fishing is great fun because it is super engaging in that way. But yeah.
And for you, from a fishing perspective, is it a hit the water, fish hard, go home, or is it a little bit more relaxed? How would you describe your days, how they play out?
Yeah, so Mike always tells me I need to get up earlier because he's kind of a sea angler, I think, really at heart. So he'll get up whatever time of the middle of the night is the best. And I think I get up perfectly early enough, to be honest. But anyway, so kind of starts off getting up early. So I'm there for dawn, I guess, is the best time to be fishing. And I am pretty, I will struggle to stop for lunch until I've caught something, or, until I feel that I've really given it a good shot. I get quite into it, and I wouldn't say I find it really relaxing, but not in a typically relaxed way. I find it relaxing because I get so kind of focused on it, and everything, the outside world just isn't there. You're just focusing on exactly what you're doing, and tuned into what you're trying to achieve, I guess. So yeah, it's relaxing, but I'm pretty, driven with trying to, and then once I've got if I'm lucky enough to have caught a fish, then I can relax a little bit, but yeah, focused on that, I guess.
And how would you describe yourself as an angler? I'd like to look at it at a couple of levels. Are you competitive if you're fishing with Mike? Is there a little bit of friendly competition there? Do you fish side by side when you're fishing, or do you like to fish on your own? How would you look at yourself as an angler?
I think friendly competition's a good way of putting it. Yeah, we do definitely have a bit of that. I'd say he's definitely a more experienced angler than me. So I'm very much learning from him every time we go out, as much as I'm learning from myself as well. Every time I go out, there's something where I think, oh, that's really interesting that didn't work, or that did work, or, that specific pull was really good. And I start thinking about, why was that? So I definitely analyze myself, but yeah, friendly competition is a good way of putting it, and I just like going out on my own as well. But I've mentioned I've gone out with a few friends before, and I love that too, because that's opening up the world of fly fishing to people that just, they wouldn't have even considered it before, because maybe their parents didn't fish, or, how it is a bit of a weird one. It's like, how do you get into that world if your parents don't fish or you don't know anyone that fishes or fly fishes. So I've taken a few friends along, and I really enjoy that too, because most of the time they get as much of a buzz from it as me. So that's quite a satisfying feeling in bringing people into the sport, or I never know if it's a sport or a pastime, but yeah, whatever it is to whoever, bringing people into it is a nice feeling as well. And it is obviously fun going with friends and making a day of it, and then sort of debriefing at the pub or whatever afterwards. It's nice.
And there's sometimes a worry about these things, isn't it? When you have, I call them civilians, people who don't fly fish, but there's almost the pressure when you're trying to get them to see it how you see it. And it's very easy, isn't it, to try and almost oversell it, because you want them to know every little nuance that works for you, why you love it so much. And there is a little bit of that in there as well, isn't there, sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. And when I've taken friends out, I do just take them to kind of fisheries, because I'm aware that, you like talking to someone about how great it is isn't enough really to get them converted into it. So I take my friend to fisheries, and I know the owner and the fish farmer of Duncton Mill, and that's one of my favourite places to go actually. And that's just West Sussex is where Duncton Mill is. It's a lovely fishery, really well kept, and the best quality trout that I've ever seen. So I've taken a few friends there, and they pretty much have always caught. And I think that's the same with teaching. I would imagine is you need to really get your student to feel what I felt on that first day on the boat in Scotland, was that pull of the line, because otherwise I think it's hard to understand it until you've felt that buzz.
And so have many of your friends, as a result of that, continued to come fishing with you?
Yeah, a couple of them, yeah. And I think Duncton Mill is a nice place for that, because it feels like, to them, it feels kind of, they know it, and there's, you've got, I think it's 3 or 4 lakes. And river fishing can be a bit intimidating, I think, so yeah, they've come back a few times, and we've gone there, and it's been good.
And like you say, the idea of a small still water for them to catch a fish, and you can almost celebrate the day afterwards via a barbecue or fish cakes, as you mentioned, or whatever that may be. And that sort of takes that on a little bit further and perhaps reinforces the joy of it for them as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like having something to take away that they've caught, and sort of killed themselves, is quite unique. And yeah, we get home. I've actually got a hot smoker that I've recently tried out. I think I've been a bit too scared to try it out up until recently, but I caught a big rainbow at Duncton about a month ago, and thought, it seems the best way to do this would probably be to put it in the hot smoker, and because it had big fillets. I think it was £6. And so yeah, filled it up and smoked it, made it into smoked trout pate. That was lovely. So yeah, I think I've really enjoyed the kind of cooking aspect to fishing as well, and so have my friends when we've done it on barbecues or made it into fish cakes or pate, or and that's what actually I would say about sea fishing is one of my favourite things, is that the fish are so tasty. So bass, absolute delicacy of a fish. And the same with plaice, and mackerel is really tasty food, and I love that part of it as well.
Nice. And you mentioned Duncton Mill, and I will shout that out as well, because about 100 years ago, I used to rent, when I lived in Essex, a lake from a farmer, and I searched out the right sort of fish, and I ended up getting them from Duncton Mill. So I had brown trout, I had rainbow trout, and I had tiger trout that came all the way up from Sussex to Essex, crossed the border, and they did really, really well there. And they were beautifully conditioned fish, and really, really was pleased that I got them from there. So that was very, very good news. Now, you talk about reading reports in trout and salmon to find fisheries, and I'm sure lots of other stuff as well. Are you devouring a lot of media, be it hard copy or social media on fishing? Is it that much to you as well to do that sort of stuff? You're really enthralled and interested by what's going on in the community?
Yeah, definitely. I find that Trout and Salmon is a great read, and I like that because it's informative. Social media tends to be, I think it's a bit more entertainment sort of led, but obviously it's good for inspiration as well. If you see someone's been somewhere and you think that looks amazing, you kind of add it to the bucket list. But I've also subscribed to Fishing TV, I think it's called, and would really recommend that because it's just endless. Fishing videos and short films and things like that. All different types of fishing from across the world, and I've loved that, and particularly hooked on Scotland. I know I'm going to sound like some sort of mad Scottish person, but hooked on Scotland I really enjoyed as a series because it's just so like stripped back and quite old fashioned in the way that they've produced it, and it's just, you know, it kind of removes all that commercial side that you can sometimes see in fishing films and like adverts and things like that for different products. It's just like none of that. It's just we're going out, we're going fishing on Loch Ness, or we're going fishing somewhere else on the river for salmon. So yeah, I do consume media as well. Yeah.
And I'll shout about Fishing TV as well because I subscribe to it, and it's really, really good. And probably will go and watch something. I know the football's been cancelled today, so I will probably go look at that. I sort of try and ration it a little bit for myself as well. So I'll watch something, and I've gone down the Robert Thompson wormhole, and he's made some amazing films. And I've been watching about the Hexagena hatch and guys fishing at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning for rising trout in complete darkness, which is amazing, and storefronts that are completely covered in duns are ready to shed to become spinner. It's just extraordinary. Yet you've got the Paul Young, which I remember, you know, when they were out on TV and you used to watch those on TV, that are absolutely fantastic. And there's something that you can dip into and always find something interesting. And I'm getting this thing about Great Lakes steelhead as well, and fascinating me. So there's so much, and it's inspirational on a whole new level. And do you have somebody who's inspired you as a fly angler?
Well, I mean, my dad really, because he has got a lovely cast, and is a very good angler in his own right. So I think it's got to be him, because without Dad's passion for it, I wouldn't have found fly fishing either. Neither would my brother probably. So yeah, he's my inspiration, and Mike as well, because Mike is someone who literally lives and breathes fishing, loves it. And that's really inspiring because it's just a passion that kind of rubs off on, not that I need any more of it really, but it rubs off on you. And like I've mentioned, it helps you learn as well. So yeah, I would say those two definitely. Oh, and actually, how can I forget about Marina Gibson as well? Got to mention Marina as being the kind of figurehead of female angling at the moment, and someone I've always looked up to for a number of years, as kind of thinking like, oh, well, you know, Marina can do it. She's out there smashing it. Like that's an inspiration for me as a fellow female angler.
And do you tie flies?
So I had no is the answer, but sort of I had knee surgery. I've torn my ACL probably about 4 years ago, and my brother sent me down a postage of a fly tying kit, and it's something that I really love, the idea of being able to, you know, tie your own fly, catch a fish on that fly, and then you've kind of conquered the whole process. But I'm quite impatient. I know this is not a strength of mine. I kind of don't like sitting still for very long. And I'm also not very kind of creative as well. So fly tying is not something I've tried yet, although I do have all the equipment to try it. So maybe that's something I'll set myself as a bit of a goal for this winter, is actually to just have a go at it and just see, because maybe it's not, maybe I've kind of over dramatized it in my head as to how long it takes to tie a fly, but I can just see it taking me ages to tie a fly, because it's not something I don't think that's going to come natural, but it would be cool to do that. Yeah.
So does that mean you're always wandering around fly shops with one of those plastic tubs thinking, oh, I might need one of these, I might need one of those?
Yeah. And I never seem to have the right flies as well. Like, it's just endless being marketed to about, you need this fly, you need that. Oh no, that fly won't work in this light. This is the one you need. It's just like, oh my goodness, okay. But I guess the answer to that is, well, tie your own, and then you can be the master of your own destiny.
There you go. And the one you could think about starting with is something like a pheasant-tail nymph, because everything else is pretty much a variant of that as well. And then you can do many things with that, and that leads on and is pretty straightforward to tie. So that might get you underway. And it suddenly does open up a different world. And I'm speaking of someone who hasn't really tied a fly in 3 years because I've sort of fallen out of love with it. But just you talking about it then, it's got me thinking about, perhaps I will tie a couple again just to see. And like you say, there is something special about that fly that you've tied on. You've selected it, you spent time, you've invested time, and lo and behold, you catch fish on it. I'm usually more surprised than the fish when that actually happens. But it's kind of nice when that, and it's another thing. And I think that's now lending itself to people finishing rods and building rods as well, to go that ultimate complete circle, as it were, of complete connection with what we're actually doing. Might be a temptation further down the line, but worth considering at some stage as well. But great fun to be able to do that as well. Again, I've got absolutely no chance of doing it because I've got wonderful friends like Warren and Sandy who do it fabulously well. So I'd much rather support them to do those sorts of things. But so 2025 isn't that far away now. Are you sitting there thinking, oh, there's somewhere I'd like to go, or there's something I'd like to plan? Obviously, you've got your grayling fishing sorted out now, but is there somewhere that you're sort of kind of thinking about, yeah, this is where I'd like to go?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the Tivy pools for the beetle hatch and have a go there. And sea trout as well is something that I have fished for briefly. I've fished a couple of nights for sea trout and didn't have any luck. But it's something, it is definitely a species that I would love to catch. Just think they're really cool, basically. But I guess further afield, I've just come back from Norway on a holiday, non-fishing related, as criminal as that sounds. But yeah, so went to Bergen. Would really recommend it as a place to visit. And well, I don't know if the listeners know, but yeah, a lot of the industry in Norway is built around fishing and the fishing industry, and there's a lot of history there. So spent some time sort of learning about that, and would love to go back there and fish the rivers there salmon would be the absolute dream. But any species really on the fly in Norway would just be, that is top of my bucket list at the moment. But obviously it is expensive, but I'm kind of saving for something like that. Hopefully next year would be amazing. But if not, that sort of bigger trip will come the following year. But I get just a buzz even just from staying in the UK and just sort of making the most of what we have here.
Scandinavia is pretty cool. As you know, I'm just back from Denmark for my yearly trip out there, and that suddenly becomes that ticks some boxes for you. The sea trout, you can just rock up and fish, which makes it a little bit more affordable from that point of view as well. And I put a reel or story or whatever they're called, I've absolutely no idea, about how strange it was that I was casting at another country. So we were looking at Sweden, and you're thinking, how the hell am I going to find a fish? And the even stranger thing about it is that Ray's saying to me, cast a little bit squarer. So your inclination is to throw as far as you can because you can see another country 5 miles across from you, in the hope that somehow you're going to find a fish that way. He's saying go a little bit squarer, 45 degrees even square, and lo and behold, the line comes to life. It is just the best thing. It is fantastic. And as a committed river angler, I can't recommend it enough. It's fabulous fun. It's bloody freezing sometimes, as you'll know, having been out in Norway recently, but it's worth it just for those moments. Like you say, from that very first moment that you're casting thinking, wow, this is such huge, dramatic expanses of water, yet somehow there's a fish there. And that's the amazing thing about that. So I would perhaps say, if you do get out there, pack a rod and see what you can find out there, because it is absolutely fantastic fun. So let's come back to the community a bit more. And how have you found the fly fishing community, let's say, comparable to some of the others that you inhabit as well?
It's been really good. I mean, like I mentioned about Meon Springs, like if they hadn't have been as helpful and as friendly and as welcoming as they were, that could have been it for me and fishing, because that one bad experience at that crucial time when I was kind of launching myself in on my own could have just put me off. But they hosted coffee mornings and things like that. They do social events there, so the sense of community there started me off. And then I think actually Orvis is really good for, they do a lot of events at their shop in Stockbridge. And I find that really good as well, because it's like generally it's very well attended, and interesting talks, like the podcast recording that you did. Was that this year? Was that earlier this year?
January this year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that helps to foster a community. With you kind of need someone hosting events, don't you? And I think who better really than Orvis to do that and set up that kind of platform for everyone to mix and mingle. So I think they do that really well. And the saltwater fly fishing festival as well, on Hailing Island. I did that this year. I mean, I don't know why I entered a competitor's ticket, but I just thought, why not? But anyway, I kind of did it thinking, like, we've done a bit of bass fishing on the fly this year, not much really before the event, and I entered and just thought, let's just see kind of what happens. The fishing was great, really good fun, hard work, because the hours, I think you can start fishing at 5 a.m. and finish at 5 p.m. or something like that. So you kind of think, well, I need to max this out. But so over 3 days, it was quite tiring. But the social element was what was really good. I exchanged numbers with people, a few people that, women actually that were there on the pizza evening that they hold on the Saturday night. The kind of like wives of the husbands that were competing, and I was speaking to them, and they said, look, I would love to come out fishing with you. Just need that kind of helping hand into it as a fellow female angler. So I need to actually pick up on that and go out fishing with those people. But yeah, the community aspect I think it's really nice, and it's really good, actually. Very welcoming.
Great. That's great to hear. So we talked about Norway, but do you have a dream destination? If you're flicking through a magazine, if you're online, you look at something, perhaps it's something that you and Mike say, actually would like to do that. Does he fly fish, by the way?
Yeah. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So do you have somewhere that you would love to head to that you think this would be the ultimate for me?
So Norway, Norway is definitely somewhere that because my degree was in geology, and I've always just idolized that country, and a lot of those kind of like Scandinavian countries, and Iceland as well, because of the dramatic landscape, and because of I studied some of the lithology, the rocks in those countries in my degree. So Norway is probably that place. Iceland as well. I just love that dramatic sort of scenery, that quite extreme environment. Is great. So yeah, either of those two would be my goal. But don't get me wrong, they're very cold countries. Maybe it's because I'm in the mindset of winter. But yeah, tiger fish look pretty cool actually. Or peacock bass, really nice. So yeah, I mean, we did. Mike and I have spoken about going to the Amazon and fishing, but it just that is extreme. That is, and I'm just not 100% sure on that yet, because I think there's a lot of like different bugs and things like that can get you, and maybe we'll find somewhere in between, like not quite as extreme as that, but yeah.
They're really cool choices, though. I'm super impressed with that, because I was going to throw bonefish to you, as you talked about being able to see fish in the chalk streams and the stalking of fish.
Yeah.
And I thought that might feature somewhere. Do they sort of pop up every now and again?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of probably my biggest highlight fishing today, it would be, I was lucky enough to go to Cuba last year, and fished for bonefish, caught a bonefish on Christmas Day, my first ever bonefish, on Christmas Day. That is my best memory so far of fishing. It was just amazing. They are an awesome species of fish. Like the environment that they live in is so cool. It's super shallow, as it's super clear, and it's like around the mangroves, and that really puts your casting to the test, doesn't it? When the guide's like 11 o'clock and and it's the pressure as well, because they've worked so hard to get you basically in front of the fish. And there was a number of times where I didn't do so well in getting it, but then luckily did catch a lovely bonefish there. And boy, did they run as well. So that was just the best feeling. So yeah, I have been to Cuba and experienced that, and I would love to go back there. It was really like amazing experience. And actually the next day as well, we were fishing for tarpon, and so in the slightly deeper water, and fly on the end, big sort of purple fly, purple and black, and fishing away, and something took the fly and just dived right down, and the guide was kind of a bit confused, and he was just like, oh, it's definitely not a tarpon, because they jump out, and worked out pretty soon basically that it was a mutton snapper, which is similar to a red snapper, but this was a big one. This was a boxing day, so I'd kind of had the bonefish extravaganza on Christmas. And then the day after was this mutton snapper, which again, I just didn't even know that this was going to be on the cards for today. And it was a pretty big fish. Probably like 12 pounds or something, or maybe more than that. We didn't weigh it, but yeah, that got dispatched off pretty quickly. And the guide got that for his Boxing Day dinner for his family. I mean, we would have loved that is a delicacy fish as well, but we couldn't take that back to the hotel, unfortunately. But yeah, so going out bone fishing again in those more tropical environments, that would be a joy as well. There's so much I want to do and explore, but it comes down to time and money, doesn't it? So yeah, just keep saving, basically. Putting it in the fishing fund.
Yeah, so many places, so little time. And that must have been some Christmas. A bonefish for Christmas is a pretty cool present, right?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. That was it. It was Christmas made. I didn't need anything else that day. That was just everything I wanted. So yeah, super cool. And we had caught tarpon as well. I caught a tarpon on that trip. Not a big one at all. Well, I'd hooked into a big one, but just really underestimated how hard you have to strike for tarpon. Took me by surprise. And so kind of the take was like, whoa, this is definitely a big fish. And it jumped down, and it was a sizable tarpon. But it shook the hook out of its mouth, and that's when I learned that you really need to strike on these fish, like not kind of, don't mess around with it, just go for it. So I won't make that mistake again, hopefully.
Nice. I think they're the fish I'd get something about. I absolutely love them, and they're so difficult as well, and just beautiful, prehistoric, fabulous creatures. So I'm long overdue, but we'll see what happens in time. We'll see what happens. As somebody younger in our community, comparable to an old fossil like myself, how do you think fly fishing looks right now?
I think in the UK, like we've still got a bit of a way to go with kind of opening up fly fishing to the younger demographic. I think compared to the likes of America, where it seems to be more kind of evenly spread between men, women, younger anglers, here it's still kind of seen, I think, as a little bit as like your older man sport. But it takes time for these sorts of changes to happen. And I guess that's something that I would like to think is kind of something that I'm positively influencing, is just putting out there the fact that I am doing it, and you don't need to be whatever, you don't need to be this, that, the other. You can just enjoy it. There's no physical, really, aspect to it. There's no way that it's advantageous to be strong, I wouldn't say, for the general type of angling. So yeah, I guess that's a little piece that I'm trying to help with, I guess, slowly, is just opening up so that if another girl or young person or whatever sees me fishing and thinks, oh, like maybe I could go, maybe that is something I could do, that would be a positive step for me. Yeah. And obviously I've got my Angling Trust level 2 coach qualification last weekend, and that's something that was one of the driving factors for me getting that, was because I want to be able to teach people from a younger person's perspective as well. And like I mentioned, I'm quite impatient, and kind of just my way of learning is, I think it's called kinesthetic. I think I learned that last week, which is kind of just grab the rod and get out there and kind of learn from your mistakes, and learn from what went well doing it yourself. So it's just a practical type of learning, really. So that's, yeah, I think that's something that was one of the reasons why I did the qualification, was because if the opportunity arises where I could teach a group of people, I'd like to think, that my angle might be slightly different to other people's.
Nice. Well, I wish you every success with that. I hope that continues to go from strength to strength for you. We're coming up an hour now, and I've got the dreaded question. Can you give me a song for the Fly Culture Road Trip Spotify playlist thingy?
Yeah, so I am going to go with a band called Skippenish, and it's a Scottish band that I love, and they've got a great mix of different types of music. Some sad, some really happy songs, some songs that you want to dance to and do Kayleys to. But the song that I've chosen, just because it seems apt, is it's called December by Skippenish, and it's just the lyrics are just amazing, and it just reminds me of my home roots.
What style of music is it?
It's country, I guess. Scottish country music. Yeah.
I've asked this question of other people before as well, and I know Lana, I asked about it. Country music and fishing in the US, I know well, is aligned, but it seems more so in the UK now, particularly with younger people too. Do you know any reason for that? Is it just that the scene's exploded a whole lot more?
I don't know. I didn't realise it was like a trend for younger people. But yeah, no, I didn't know that. But I guess it's just it kind of fits with the sort of environment of fishing, I think. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love drum and bass as well. But I think, country music just feels more like the right fit for fishing. So yeah, maybe that's why.
Nice. Well, if people want to connect with you, Zoe, how do they find you? What are your social media handles?
So I'm called the Fisher Lass on social media. So yeah, give me a follow on there. And I do also have a blog as well, because something I enjoy doing is writing, and you can read through some of my experiences that I've spoken about on this podcast on there and see some photos. So that's linked in my Instagram as well. So yeah, please connect with me. That'd be great.
There you go, the Fisher Lass. So check that account out as well and have a look at that. Well, Zoe, it's been lovely to chat with you. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast. As I said to you before we were recording, it's all done in one take. So everything's one take. And we go down wormholes as well, because we had some rough questions, but you provided some really fascinating answers that allowed us to take that conversation in a completely different direction, which I've enjoyed immensely. So I would like to say a massive thank you for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast today.
Well, thanks, Pete, for having me. It's been great to talk to you. And also thanks for introducing me to Jilly as well, because if it wasn't for that podcast, recording at the Orvis store, then I don't think we'd be here. So it's cool. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. That's why we like to do these things, create communities, put people together, get them fishing, get them talking, all of those sorts of things. And I guess this podcast is something along those sorts of lines as well. So thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Fly Culture podcast. As ever, there's going to be another episode very, very soon. Thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.